Humans in technology need to code eventually, and we have no excuses for it. We have a lot of resources online, a lot of books and courses. We have LLM tools that helps us. And if we want to go even further and put together testers and developer, what better way to do it than use performance testing and performance engineering? So let's find out about these details with Nicole. She's a developer advocate at Grafana, and she has a lot of useful tips for us today, including how to take notes with all the things you learn new. So it will be a really interesting discussion. Hello Shift Happens viewers. Once again, it's a Thursday afternoon. We are releasing a new episode and we prepare for you new stuff to learn for the next days. We'll be getting more into coding, into performance testing, so it will be really interesting. Hi Nicole, thanks for taking time to discuss with us. So we're gonna start easy by letting you introduce yourself and let the viewers know who is Nicole.
Okay, great. That's easy. I'm Nicole van der Hoeven. I'm a senior developer advocate at Grafana Labs. And what else do? I do a lot of YouTube videos. I do blog posts. I do all the things. I like geeky stuff. And I'm really enjoying the conference. I'm happy to be speaking today, actually, here at Romanian Testing Conference.
Great. We'll have a lot of things to talk about. I'm not sure we have enough time to talk all the things I want to ask you about Grafana, about solutions, about performance, about your YouTube videos and some things that I saw there. But before jumping into these topics, I would want to go a bit deeper, go beyond the surface a bit. So somehow I've been noticing that there are experiences in our past that one way or another program us into the career we take. So can you give us some examples that could be useful for maybe our younger viewers that might want to think of which career should I choose or which part of IT should I choose?
Yeah.
What was your childhood or teenage experience that made you drive into this direction?
So I had a very non-traditional introduction to tech. I am not a computer science major. I've never studied anything development related formally. I'm an economics major. I had no idea what I wanted to do for my career. I think it's really a tough thing that we're putting on younger people when we're 18. We're expected to know what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. My experience was not like that. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I shifted my majors 8 times over 2 different countries. I had no clue. And in the end, I graduated from a degree I've never used. So I wouldn't recommend that people try to know at a young age what they should do, especially when it's something like tech. For a woman, that's not the usual path. I was pushed down, literature and English and language. It's like, oh, you can talk. You should do something with that. You can write. It's like, yeah, but I also like math. I also like science. So I think
there were things in your past that were like the foundations of the tech career, but you didn't knew it back then.
Yeah, I am very lucky to have had a dad that really supported me. He was a different kind of engineer, an electrical engineer, but he always said, no daughter of mine will do anything she doesn't want to do. You
Perfect.
do just what you want. And I'm really lucky because not every girl has a dad like that.
My dad also an engineer, mechanical engineer, and he was very supportive, but he was telling me, hey, stay away of the engineering career, right? Back then, he didn't knew what software engineering would mean, but he said, engineering, nah, there are other things better than engineering. But in the end, I pursue software engineering career, and now he understands, okay, you took the right decision at some point. But it's always useful to have somebody that supports. It's okay not to have a clue, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
try stuff out.
even I was thinking like, why do we rush into choosing a college, choosing a university? In Romania, at least, we don't have this culture. But I would be pro sabbatical year right after your high
Yeah.
school. Try different things, meet different people,
Yeah.
see stuff, and then start with some major studies. But even so, the idea is that it's okay to shift at some point, right? And do the things that you love, because I suppose you are doing the things that you love right
Yeah.
now, right?
And I also think formal education is great, but also I would say don't think that that's the only way that you can learn. For example, if you want to get into tech, you don't have to do a 4 year degree to start. You can already be learning online. We live in the age where knowledge is at our fingertips.
Could help though if you want
Yeah.
to do some very low level complex stuff, probably.
Yeah,
So
for
if you want to
sure.
write the next compiler, if you want to write like Go was developed, right? If you want to
Yeah.
write a compiler for a new programming language that takes the best out of other programming languages, maybe you need to go deeper and
Yeah.
understand more sides of what software engineering means. But as you said, you can jump from a completely different career. There's a lot of resources, there's a
Yeah.
lot of trainers, coaches. It will be a formal education, but not the traditional university
Yes.
one. Okay, great. What I saw on your LinkedIn profile is that you've been in a lot of countries.
Yes, I have been. I have like itchy feet. I like to every few years. I'm like, where can I live next?
Yeah. How is it to travel around, and how does the software world look like when you see it from different countries or continents even?
I think so. I really like to travel, but I also don't like to just be a tourist. I like to really live in a country. I want to learn the language. I want to buy a house, pay taxes,
Okay.
and when you do that, the experience is totally different. It's not just, you don't see just the tourist sites, you get to be a local. And I think that a lot of that is applicable to testing, actually, because as testers, we have to go on to different projects all the time, and you can't be a tourist. You can't just see all the happy paths and the nice things there is to see. I think a good tester really gets into the culture of the application, the company, the people that you're working with.
Yeah.
You have to really know it very quickly. And that's kind of what I do in my personal life too. So I moved to the Netherlands 6 years ago. I have my Dutch citizenship. I pay taxes. I speak Dutch. I do my taxes in Dutch.
But you also live
All
in
the
Portugal
things.
from time to time,
And
right?
and sometimes I live in Portugal too. Yes.
Which is a nice country to live in from time to time. Yeah, I did enjoy staying there for a couple of weeks. Um, Your headline says developer advocate. Okay, I've been meeting a lot of people with this headline, and I was always wondering what does developer advocate means. And
Yeah.
I said I'm gonna research it, but then I forgot, and I meet the next one, and I'm into the discussion with that person. Always interesting and
Yeah.
smart people I've been meeting that are having this headline, but I never knew. What does it mean? What's a developer advocate?
Yeah. So there's two parts of it, the developer part and the advocate part. I look at it as my job is partly, doing something engineering focused. So that could be like deploying an application or writing some code or writing a test script. So that's part of it, and that's very traditional, like software engineer type stuff. And then the advocate part is me being at conferences and talking to people and actually helping people learn different things about what I'm doing. So I like to say that I learn to build cool stuff and then I tell people how I did it.
Okay, great. So this is the advocate part. You mentioned the role that you have within a cross-organizational community, right? But there's also specific roles that you have within your organization as an advocate. Like you are responsible of making the other tech guys to adopt a new technology or a new mindset, or
Yeah, there's also internal advocates because I'm a performance engineer, and when I joined Grafana Labs, I actually joined through K6, which is the
okay,
performance tool, the testing tool. And so it was a tool that I'd already used in projects, and this is my area of expertise. So the difference is I'm joining the company as someone who was a user. And so I am uniquely qualified to say, like, actually, that's not what I wanted. I used K6, and this is what I wished I had seen. So there's a lot of internal advocacy of, like, oh, this is how we do performance in the field. This is how we're
okay,
using your product.
okay, okay, nice. So you mentioned K6. I've been hearing recently, to be honest, about K6. I love when I learn new stuff from my colleagues, and it happened a lot to learn new stuff from my tester colleagues. And I remember a couple of years I learned how to do performance testing besides the way I was used to by writing some code, spanning some threads in my system and doing coding all the stuff. And then I learned, okay, know there's this tool called JMeter, you can use
Yes.
it, right? I learned how to use it. It was a lot of years ago. Now in my organization it's like a standard to have this performance testing with JMeter. How is it with K6? Can you tell me a
Yeah.
bit about the...
So I'm very familiar with JMeter actually. I think I've probably used it more than K6 because it's just been around longer. It's been around for like 20 years now or
Okay.
something. And so I really still like JMeter. There were a few issues that I noticed with it personally while I was using it. One was that anytime you have to collaborate on a script with someone on your team, it is XML based.
I did had the same
So
challenge,
yeah,
yes.
so it's hard. You can version control it, but when someone checks in a change, you have to go through XML to see what they change. And so there's like one little thing you changed might have spawned changes in many parts of the script, and it's hard to see at a glance what exactly was changed. So that was difficult. The other thing is with JMeter that you have to tune the JVM as well. So it's a
Yes,
Java
yeah,
app.
yeah.
So you have to make sure that it has enough heap memory assigned to it, because if you don't, then the performance test itself could run out of resources
Exactly. Happened a lot
before it
of
tests
times.
something else, right? So
Yes.
it's just like an extra layer of complication.
Java it is challenging in terms of
Yeah.
memory. In 2012, I started reading about Go. In 2011, in 2012, 1 year after it was released, we had also an MVP released in operational using Go, and I couldn't believe my eyes after seeing only Java applications occupying lots of RAM memory, and then had
Yeah.
a Golang doing the same thing with the footprint of 20 mega, 30 mega, something like this. So it
Yeah.
was like, where were you my entire life? K6 relies like Grafana tools also on
Yes,
Golang.
it's written in
It's
Go,
written in Go.
and that's one big like mindset shift, because with JMeter, one virtual user is one thread, one process.
Indeed.
In K6 or in Go, it's not like that because
Yeah.
it uses Go routines.
Yes, which are
So
fabulous, right?
yeah, so Go is built for performance. So
Indeed.
it means that an entire thread is not just waiting for instructions. It's able to more dynamically shift according to what is needed at the time, which makes it so performant. And, as a performance testing tool, you really want to be also performant yourself.
Okay, you convinced me. I'm gonna be the advocate of K6 within my organization. I've been asking them, guys, let me try something with Go. I know we are a Java
Yeah.
organization, but Go is fabulous. Let's try something. Let me show you something, and maybe you decide we can shift some projects towards this technology. However, we do use Grafana a lot.
Oh,
The,
nice.
I mean, the whole world
The
is
dashboards,
using
yeah.
Grafana, right? Yeah, the dashboards exactly to do some monitoring. Maybe I thought if we can get a bit into some details that could be useful for our viewers, like some tech stack that you might share about whether it's K6 or Grafana that could be useful besides what we discussed. Okay, so there's these tools, but behind these tools, what would be the tech stacks that other tech guys could use in their products?
Yeah. So at Grafana, it started with Grafana itself, which is a fork of Kibana, another open source
Yes.
project. And now it's like so many different other projects. We've created some ourselves, but then also we've employed maintainers of other projects, like Prometheus, for
Yeah.
example. Even though it's open source and we didn't start it, we contribute heavily to it, and everything is really based on Go. Or really a Go shop. We do have some Python in our infrastructure, and we also have like on the front end JavaScript, and
Okay.
everything runs on. There's a lot of Kubernetes, AWS, and GCP.
Okay. Okay. So we are we are moving to the cloud as much as possible, right? There's a lot of things that are already built in there. You don't have to
Yeah.
rewrite them, and you can focus on the important stuff. This is what I also liked in the first years with Go, because it was a growing ecosystem, and we get to work in different open source projects. We had the need. We were writing our own libraries for some specific needs, helped us understand better how it works, and
Yeah.
this is a safe way towards a performance system. But if you want to cut the corners, what should you do now if you want performance system? Where do you start?
Where do you start? I would start with the production incidents that have already happened.
So an analysis of what happened.
Historical analysis
Okay.
of issues you already know exist. I think that's an easy place to start. And also do make
Okay.
it a risk-based analysis. Maybe something happened, but it's to do with a part of the site that isn't really that important. Maybe focus on the payment processing or other things like that that you know are critical and need to work every time.
Okay. Okay, so we start by analyzing what happened in the past, the issues we know we had. Then, should we continue with some profiling of our systems? How
Yeah,
can
well, I mean, I'm kind of assuming here if you have historical metrics that you already have
you
some
have?
observability
Okay,
tools in place. If not, that would actually be where I would start, because before you can, it's like a black box. If before you can improve what's in that black box, you have to see what's in it. Like, what
okay,
is the current state?
okay. We are not able to find something that is already built in a cloud provider, for example, right? We have the cloud provider, we are deploying our systems there. We might have a log tracer, but we don't know details about how our system works, correct? So we can start by using some tools to analyze what first. Maybe start easy with RAM memory and with CPU usage, right? This is easy to.
Yeah.
Then, how should we collect data about our critical flows in our application? It's like have a tool that saves some data in a analytics database, and then we run some analytics on top of it, or we should use a tool that already does all this stuff and gives us the reports.
Well, it kind of depends on your stack, but if you're doing something on Kubernetes, for example, or one of the more common things, if you have a Go application, these are really low hanging fruit because you can instrument it using something like the open telemetry collector.
Yeah.
And I really like that idea because it gives you a lot of things already. So it's not just logs. You can get traces as well, and you can get metrics. Grafana has an OTel collector distribution, and it's called Alloy. So obviously, like
Yeah.
that one I've used more, but it's really the same thing. It collects information. If you had to do it one by one, I would start with logs. So everyone starts with logs, and really every other type of data can come from logs. So I think that's like the cornerstone. But it is really nice once you start to get into, for example, continuous profiling,
Yeah.
which is what you were talking about. Because when you look at CPU utilization or memory utilization, sometimes just measuring those things causes a performance overhead
Indeed.
that is,
Logging, right? It
yeah,
was the first
everything.
thing that I heard about in the performance tuning training that
Yeah.
I started by joining some, I ended up by delivering ones, but this stayed with me for a lot of years. Like, guys, be careful with your logging.
Yeah.
Logging is a performance killer to your system, and
Yeah.
usually we do debugging by logging more stuff. Like, at least those who are trained by the old guys in IT that were used to do this, because not having a proper debugger, they were enhancing their software with a lot of
Yeah.
debug log lines, right? And let's put them like this in production to make sure it doesn't crash for a while. We forget about that. And if you are in the cloud, no, it's not only the performance killer of your logging, but it's also your pocket gets
Yes.
emptied, right? The logging, at least on our organization, we use Google Cloud Platform. Logging costs a lot.
Yeah.
I would, I'm not sure, maybe on AWS also, but it costs a lot
It
if you
costs
want.
a lot everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's an actual application too. There's your application, but then your observability stack is also a stack.
Yeah. We want to make our life easier, but then we make our systems too much complex, and we put a lot of overhead. I remember at some point we were sending data with some plugins to Slack just to be easier for us. Then we discovered Kibana, and we said, okay, we move the logs there so we can analyze them and search them easily. Okay, we need to call DevOps to give us 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes RAM for the
Yeah.
Kibana and so on. And you ended up putting a very large system
Yeah.
that maybe sometimes it's not the right path. Now, what I'm wondering is, how do you stay focused? There's a lot of tools out there, right? And in IT, things change a lot.
Yeah.
What would be the best approach? How to sharpen your skills as a performance engineer? Should you decide a tool and stick with it for some years and get to know it better and use it better into your systems, or go to conferences, read books, follow trendsetters in IT, and stop using the old one and try the new one for tool? I mean,
I
for
I think it's better to be tool agnostic if you can. I think learn the best practices first because
perfect.
those are basics. Things like, hey, did you know if you just log all the things that's actually going to be worse for your performance, not better. That's not something that's specific to a tool. That's something that will apply to any tool. Or like, the practice of going to historical data and actually seeing what is happening now before we start to change anything. What is the current state? That's not to do with any tool. So I would suggest learn the best practices first from people who are at conferences or from your colleagues or from books. And then choose like the languages that make sense for your application
Yeah.
and for
For
your
your team,
team. Yeah, and
yes.
for the company as well. So K6 is a little bit weird because it's based in Go. app itself, tool itself is built in Go. The scripting language is JavaScript.
Okay.
And the reason that we did that is because JavaScript is pretty much ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Whether you're a front end developer or you're a tester who's used to Selenium or Playwright,
Indeed.
it is becoming the testing language. And so when that happens, the tool has to be able to shift to accommodate that trend. So it's more important that your team is able to use it than that you're using a specific tool.
Somehow you put on the table two things. You put the performance of Go to do the instrumenting and performance analysis and so on, but you also provide to your users the easiest scripting language
Yes.
to adopt easier that tool. Yeah. To be honest, I have to give credits to the Polytechnic University in Bucharest that I attended, because these were the kind of things we were learning when we were in school, like best practices, like design
good.
patterns, right?
Yes.
I didn't know about tools back then, but when I started my first job, okay, this is the framework number one, framework number two, framework
Yeah.
library number two. Okay, learn them. We have to do projects with these
Yeah.
ones. Okay.
And
Yeah.
that is so important. I like what you said about these frameworks, because I think a lot of good testing is about creating these mental models. It's not about
Yeah.
specific applications. It's like, oh, a Java app. Okay, so in a Java app, what are the things you need to know? Okay, you need to tune for the JVM. You need to know this, and this kind of app. Okay, this one is an e-commerce app. Let's say, what are the most critical things that could go wrong in an e-commerce app? Payment processing. You'll probably need to stub out the payment processing because you're probably using some sort of third-party vendor. When you go into these projects, I really recommend that people take notes, not just on the specific project, but try to abstract out of it, because you're gonna work on multiple e-commerce sites in your career as a tester. There are some things that are just going to happen again and again, and if you're like, oh yeah, I remember this happened, it was slightly different, but we had a problem here, and maybe we should check that. Once you start taking notes, then you can look back at them, because you always think you'll remember things, but you don't.
Yeah. And on top of this, as you said before, it's better to choose something that makes sense, right, to your organization and your teams, and even find frameworks and best practices that are related to your needs, your tech stack, right?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, the whole world it's doing this framework, but within your organization you have this data quality issues more than other problems that you find in testing, and it's better to have this setup of tools for monitoring performance, for monitoring errors, for maintainability, whatever. Build something with the tools your teams are familiar with that is reusable and useful for your organization in the end. Nice. You mentioned taking notes, right? So let's give our viewers a suggestion. I know there's a lot of useful resources on your website. There's an interesting YouTube video explaining how you are doing these things to help you with your career. So we read books, we attend conferences, we read posts, we listen to podcasts like this one, and you guys heard that you can try that tool and that tool and that technology. Okay, take some notes in order not to forget them. Okay?
Yeah.
What's next to have a useful database of notes that you can use or you can share with others or use maybe some months or years later in some other projects? So what's your recommendation? What's your tricks?
I think there's a difference between taking notes and making notes. Taking notes is like, oh, you said this thing, let me write it down.
Okay.
Making notes is like, is that correct, what you said? because this other person told me something else. What
Okay.
does that mean when I look at this, industry trend? What does that say about it? What does it say about you? What does it say about your company? So like thinking more critically about it. So you could take notes on here's how to use K6. That's useful. But then you could also abstract that a little bit and be like, what can I learn about performance from how K6 is built, or how, like every performance testing tool, every tool has different terminology slightly. Like in JMeter, for example, it's threads. In
Mm-hmm.
K6, it's like a virtual user. In another
Yeah.
tool, is it a scenario? Is it a population? But you need to get clear on the basics.
Of
So like
course.
I personally have a note on like here's what a performance tool looks like. Normally it'll have a way to induce delay, and sometimes it's called think time or pacing or pause or sleep or something.
Okay.
But there's always that abstract thing that's always true. Those are the things I think that are very useful because those will apply to any tool that you end up using.
Okay. Okay. And where do I put them in order to have them?
So I use a tool called Obsidian. It's
Okay.
obsidian.md. Some people joke that I'm like an unofficial advocate for them too. I'm not.
I
I'm
thought about
like,
it, yeah. I thought about it, and then I think I saw something written, yeah. I'm not selling Obsidian, guys.
yeah,
I'm
it's
just
free.
wanna,
There's
yeah.
nothing to
I'm
sell.
sharing that it's useful for me, so that's why I
yeah.
wanted to share with our viewers too. I haven't got a chance to try it, but I will try it. So
Yeah.
Obsidian, yeah, this is the way where. How is it useful for you? So you put all those notes there, and what's more than?
Than like Google Docs or something. The main thing is the linking. And it seems so simple, but like in Google Docs, I don't know if you have the same problem, but we just end up with so many Google Docs and it's like, what was the other one? I guess I'll do a search or whatever. In Obsidian, everything is linked. So you have like a main page and there are links to it. But if you go to one of those pages, you also see the backlinks. Here are all the pages that link to it. And then the weird thing is, even if you don't explicitly link, even if you just, for example, you have a note called performance testing, even if you don't link to performance testing, if you write the words performance testing somewhere else, it'll still point you back to that note. And so you start to build connections in this way that I was saying, like zoom out a little bit and think
Which
about
is the way our brain works.
that's
Yeah,
how our
makes it
brains
natural.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's weird that we don't take notes that way. We take notes in this, like, here's a single Google Doc, send it to someone, and then it gets lost. And we
Exactly.
never look at it again because it's not connected to anything relevant.
Yeah, very useful advice. And if our viewers want to know more, we'll find on your website. I learned a lot. And what's even better is that I'm convinced that I will try at least two tools. Yeah, once I have some spare time. So some work to do in the weekend.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
Uh,
so much for having me.
we we're gonna close just if you have like a final thoughts for the viewers, or if you wanna share something that I haven't asked about, or you have a book that you read recently and you wanna share with our viewers.
I would like to say that you're talking about tips for people who are maybe getting into the industry or just trying to improve. I'm a big proponent of learning in public because I think there's a tendency, especially with tech, to be like, oh, I only know this much, so let me learn in private because it's so embarrassing that I don't know this. But the thing is, everyone thinks that way. We are all learning. I mean, you think people, when Kubernetes came out, they're like, oh yeah, Kubernetes, I totally know what that is. No, Kubernetes is a complex thing. It's totally okay. Like I've been learning about it for so long and I'm still like, okay, how does it work? Like it is a fundamental shift in how we do things, and that happens all the time. And we don't know what we don't know unless we're open about it. So I'm pretty open about what I'm a noob about. And I really like just being able to talk to people and being like, "Hey, I actually don't know what you're talking about. Can you tell me, like explain to me like I'm 5 what that thing is?"
Yeah.
And that's learning in public, and people see that and they're like, "Oh, it's okay not to know everything." Yeah, it totally is. And if you don't express that, then you don't help the community as a whole grow as well.
It's a perfect ending message. So guys, it's okay not to know everything, and be sure that you know something that the others don't. So let's be more open about this. Thanks for watching us. If you liked our content, share it with somebody in your school or in your organization or in your group of tech friends. And drop us feedback on the platforms you are watching. Thank you, stay curious, and see you on the other side.
Thank you.